That's Drew.
And that's Mike.
And that's Glenn.
Welcome, friends.
For our viewers and listeners, Glenn is the founder of Le Gourmet TV and the man behind the Glen and Friends cooking channel on YouTube, where they're all about great recipes, tasty food, amazing drinks, and no BS. Since starting in 2007, Glen's channel has grown to nearly 400,000 subscribers with over 51 million views. Follow the links in the bio to watch delicious culinary content on Glen's channel and check out his other social media for more behind-the-scenes looks at what Glen and his friends do. Glen, thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for inviting me over.
Hey, we're glad to have you. I wish it was a day and age where we could all be together,
We
eating
could all
some
get
food,
together.
having some
could
nice
cook you
cocktails.
something.
Oh, that would be
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I would love to go to the shed where you are there. I'm so glad that you're in the on the set.
This is my workplace. I feel very comfortable here. I spend so much time in this shed that it feels like home.
Yeah, I mean, it is part of your home, right?
It is. It's in the backyard.
Yeah.
It's a great place to be.
I love it, man. I think one of my favorite videos on your channel was the tour of the shed itself and the studio, because it really gave so much context. Watching the channel, I could see everything, but I didn't see what it was really about.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's it. I mean, I spent most of my life in television production. And so just offside of the set, it is a complete disaster because it is what a TV studio looks like. And when I did that background tour, I had a lot of really sort of strange messages from people who said, wow, you shouldn't have shown me that. I thought you were in your kitchen. I thought you were in a house. I didn't realize you were in a shed in the backyard. And I think that sort of broke some of the magic for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. But it also you showed so much behind the scenes. I've never worked in the film. I've always seen it just as a viewer, and it really shows you what goes into producing high quality content. And I think it was a great perspective for me. Obviously, it does take away from some of the magic because I would love for it to be in your kitchen, like I believe when your channel started, and we'll get there later, but I believe it was in the actual kitchen.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah.
So let's start back growing up, right? So you're born and raised in Toronto. When did
Toronto.
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 Oh, okay.
Toronto.
I am speaking as a clear American. Toronto.
Yeah.
When did you discover your passion for food? What was that first experience like?
My mom used to tell a story. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and she was sick. And I said, I'll take care of supper. And I cooked a roast beef dinner for Sunday meal, complete with mashed potatoes, roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, and the whole deal. And I don't know if it was any good, but, the family sat around and they all ate it and they thought it was fine. And so at that very early age, food was always part of my life. And also, my grandparents owned an island where us as kids, we all spent the summertime. And so my grandmother had a huge garden. And so we would be, growing food and pickling it for the wintertime. And so, as the young child, you're out there picking the beans and doing all the things that Granny wants you to do to put the food away for winter. And so that was always part of my life, that food, that connection to food. Raising ducks, raising rabbits, all of that stuff.
So I want to go back to that first thing that you said. You cooked this entire meal as an 8 or 9 year old. As an 8 or 9 year old, for me, I would have no idea what I was doing. So what was did you have recipes? Were you just kind of, I know I've seen my mom and my grandma do this a bunch, or how'd that go?
It's just stuff that I knew because I've always been there doing it with them. And so instead of having someone tell me what the next step was, I was now just saying, okay, well, I think the next step is this. And then you just kind of go on from there. And so it was very intuitive. It was very intuitive.
And so after that first meal, did you impress your family enough that they started recruiting you for future jobs in the kitchen?
I was always cooking from that point. Yeah, I was always cooking. Yeah.
And so going from the family meal to now producing food on a daily basis, I'm guessing from there, what was the spark from there that led you to follow a culinary career? What was it? Just your love and passion for that?
So it kind of gets circuitous before I get to cooking on YouTube.
Okay.
Because my passion is film.
Right. And that was going to be the next question after this. So, but yes,
Okay.
keep going.
So my passion is film, and I worked in film, mostly making television commercials. And a big part of that was working in a studio here in Toronto that just did food inserts. So when you watch a TV commercial and you see chicken flying through the air, or salad falling onto it, there are very specific directors of photography who do that work separate from the rest of the commercial. Oh. And so my first job in film was working with a director of photography here in Toronto, in a studio that just filmed food, like very hyper focused on food, steaks flopping down onto a grill and that sort of thing. And that's kind of where my two passions came together. And I realized that I really liked making food on film.
Okay.
And that's how that grew. So the food was always there. It was always something that I really enjoyed. And then when I don't want to get too far ahead on you guys.
So let's pull it back just real quick, okay. and so we've developed a passion for food, and obviously that leads you to the food and film career. But when did you decide and fall in love with film? And was it through TV? Was it through movies? Was it through the experience of going to theaters? How did that happen?
I was never a very good student in school. I mean, I got good grades. I failed my final year of high school, even though I had 80%. But because I didn't go to class.
That explains it.
So here in Ontario, they can take away your year and say, you got the marks, you passed all of the assignments, you passed all of the exams, but you didn't come to class, so you don't get to move ahead. So that's kind of an aside. And so I was in, I guess I was in grade 8, and I had gone into a brand new, I guess you would call it a middle school, grade 7 and 8.
Yep.
And so in grade 7, when I got there, it was a brand new school, and they had a dark room. And I had a really cool homeroom teacher who said, hey, if you like photography, they've got all of this brand new equipment. You should try playing with it. And I fell in love with photography and working in a dark room and making still images. And when I got to grade 8, I was having trouble in English, and we had this giant project at the end of grade 8 it was a creative project. And I couldn't figure out what to do. I had to write something. I was like, what am I going to write? So I wrote a script, and I grabbed a Super 8 camera, and I went out and I filmed a short movie for this class. And I aced it. And it's like, okay, I really enjoy doing this. I enjoy the process of making images. I enjoy the process of coming up with the ideas. And that sort of led on to the career later.
Well, where did that take you after that project? Where did that passion take you in terms of your education beyond grade 8?
So I stuck with making short films and making Super 8s. I stuck with photography. I have a dark room. I still do a lot of still work. Of course, I got sidetracked at university. The push in my family was to go to university and get a degree, which I did, which I kind of wish I hadn't done.
Really?
For myself personally, I think a better path for me would have been to go right into film and work from the ground up. And so I got a degree. I got a science degree, nothing to do with the creative process. I couldn't convince my parents that taking something creative at university was worthwhile. So I got a science degree. And then when I came out of university, I started working in film, and I started at the bottom. I started moving sandbags in the back of the cube van. Humping gear, being the low guy on the totem pole who always got told what to do. Go get this guy a coffee, go get the director something, and really just sort of work my way up from there.
What was the first, I want to go back a little bit. What was the first camera that you had? So a Super 8 is a film style, correct?
Film stock, yes.
Yeah.
So the first moving picture film camera that I had was a Bell and Howell Super 8, right? And it's I still have it. It doesn't work anymore, but I still have it.
Do you still have some of your short films too?
I still have those. I haven't digitized them. I pull them out every once in a while and run them through a projector because there's something so magical about a piece of film.
100%.
And that really excites me. And I always think I should digitize them so that I can send them to people. And I think, no, it wasn't meant to be watched that way. It's meant to be watched in a dark room with a little bit of flicker.
Yeah, that would be... That'd be amazing to like have friends over, cook, and then throw them on like a sheet in the backyard or
On a sheet.
something. Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's the way it was supposed to be.
And how about your still cameras? What kind of still cameras did you enjoy shooting with?
I still have my first still camera. It was a Ricoh KR5, completely mechanical. I still have it. I still shoot with it. Eventually, I moved on to having like Hasselblads and Mamiyas, like medium format cameras.
That's my favorite. I love medium format stuff.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Yeah. So, and I still have film. I still play with it. You can't make any money with it anymore. Like on a professional level, you can't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense unless you're making pure art that you're gonna make giant prints hang on a wall and hope that someone in a gallery wants to buy them.
Right.
Yeah, I was always shocked because my first camera was a digital camera, and I always loved the idea of taking videos and film, and YouTube was the draw for me because it was just like this everyone's kind of dumping ground of all their content, and when I met Drew, he would always tell me how these these film cameras from 1980s, 90s, early 2000s still had better picture quality than a digital. It still blows my mind, and I'm glad that you said that, because if you're going to blow it up and do art, there's a still market for that.
Especially with medium format, because you can get some like folding cameras that will fit in your pocket still with a medium format film, and you can get such a large negative that it's incredible.
Wow.
I have a Mamiya C330 that looks like a little box that you look down into it.
Oh, I love the twin lens reflex cameras. Those are my favorites.
And so you can do street photography with that. And today, nobody realizes that you have a camera because it's at your waist. You're looking down into it, and it's like they don't recognize what it is. And so you can capture some stuff that is amazing that you couldn't get if you had a camera up at your face.
Yeah.
That you couldn't, because they would say, "Oh, that guy's taking a picture." But with it down at your waist, they're like, "Oh," and they just look right past you.
I've noticed too that people are a lot more open to the thought of being photographed with film, at least in my experience. And I don't know if that's just sort of the sort of whimsical nature of it. Like it's old fashioned. It's kind of quaint to a lot of people, but it's interesting. Yeah, it's romantic in a sense, and it's interesting because they're never going to see that unless you know them personally. If you're just taking pictures of strangers, for example, they're never going to see that. They're never going to know what you do with it.
Yep.
And so you have this passion for photography and for film, and you go to college, you get your science degree, and you then move into the professional career. You graduate college and you're moving sandbags, getting director's coffee. Why did you pull that draw? Just because you knew all through college that film and your passion for this was where you wanted to go?
It's what I wanted to do. And my science degree, I worked in it for a little while. Forestry.
Forestry?
I have a degree in forestry. I don't know if you know anything about Canada, but where the trees are, there are no people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and my wife has the same. We went to university together. She has the same degree. We worked for the same companies. We worked far out into the bush.
Oh, wow.
And we both looked at each other one day and said, we're living in this little town called Makina, where the bank is open 2 days a week. The grocery store is something called Northern Store. I don't know. Do you know who Hudson's Bay Company is? Maybe not.
The name is familiar.
Hudson's Bay Company is the oldest still operating corporation on the planet. They were founded in 1670 or something.
Wow.
And so the King of England gives them this corporation and says, "You can have Canada, bring us beavers."
Yeah.
Essentially. And so in this little town, there's this remnant of the Hudson's Bay Company called the Northern Store, which is a department store and a grocery store. It's only open a couple days a week. The fresh vegetables come in on one day, and if you're not there right away, you don't get fresh vegetables.
Wow.
And we kind of look at each other and say, what are we doing in this town? Is this really where we want to be? And so we hauled out of there.
Yeah.
And changed direction a little bit.
How did you start working your way up to more higher up levels beyond just being the runner for directors or grabbing coffee? What was your path personally to making your way up the ladder, we'll say?
So I went from production assistant to production manager, which is the person who oversees the production assistants. And then there was a producer that I was working with, and he said, I think you should come and work with me as an assistant producer. So it was just really sort of proving myself along the way that I could look at a situation. I'm also a fairly calm person.
It seems that way.
There's not much that, under pressure that's really going to, I don't break. I sort of just step back and keep quiet and say, okay, now this is what we need to do to get out of this mess. And so that really worked well from the producer standpoint. And then it was just a matter of, being an assistant producer long enough that I then became a producer. And then eventually I was head of production at one of the sort of major companies here in Toronto that makes TV commercials. So I worked my way out of doing what I wanted to do.
So
that's pretty much what happened.
I got a silly question before you ask
go
your
for
question, Mike. You mentioned before, like, sort of the salads being tossed in the air, the chicken flying around in the air, the burgers and the steaks flopping down on the grills.
Yep.
What does behind the scenes look like on one of those? Is there somebody that's throwing the food into the air? Like, take our listeners and our viewers through what it would look like to capture a 3-second spot of chicken wings flying through the air, for example.
So when I started doing that, there were people who were tossing stuff. And so you would have 4 or 5 people on set who, on a mark would toss, or one person would toss and then the next person. But now it is, because of automation, they're building rigs that they can computer control to get it exact.
Wow.
So where we would do 40 or 50 takes to get something to kind of look okay. Now it's more automation, and people will build rigs that do very specific things. And also, going back to that time period, we were shooting on film.
Yeah.
And
right.
so there wasn't much of a playback. You had a little thing called the video tap that sort of captured what the eyepiece saw, and you would play that back, but it was low quality, and you wouldn't really know what was on the film until the next day.
Yeah.
So there was a terror attached to that. Did we get it? Did we really get it? Should we move on, or we, did we mess it up?
in that case, I would imagine more is better. So take more. Hey, I don't know. I'm thinking we should take another one. It's always probably better to take that second take, fourth take, 50th take.
It is, and then you run up against the wall of cost.
Yeah.
Because film, even then, film was very expensive, and processing the film was very expensive, and transferring it over to video so that you could watch it again was very expensive. So there was that expense. It was always this, like, did we get it, or was it too expensive? Should we move on? And that cost thing was always there.
And I would imagine the time and people and all those things also factor into it. Even one more take, you got to get everything reset. That's 30, 40, 50 minutes of more time of the whole set being together.
Well, and you would have, at that studio that I was working at that just did the food, you would have 40 or 50 people on set.
Wow.
Everybody's got their own little job, and it doesn't really make sense what they were making if I said to you what they were making then today, because it's changed a lot in 30 years. But people on film sets get paid really well.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to go into overtime. You don't want to pay them any extra. You want to make sure that you get it and get out. Yeah.
I want to go back to when you started this, because I feel like, and this might be naive, I'm not 100% at all. Actually, I'm 0% understanding of the film industry, but I've always been interested in it. And it seems like there's multiple paths that you can go into, especially from starting as a runner, starting as a sandbag boy, moving the cameras, things like that. Because you could go into being a film side, you could go into directing, producing. So you went down the production path and the producer path. Yes. Why did you choose that route?
It was the path of least resistance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Being kind of young, you start to see the paycheck, and you say, "Oh, if I move up to this next level, my paycheck's going to grow." Film is a dirty business. I don't want to say dirty, but it is a dirty business, in that people are brutal towards you. If you want to move ahead in one department and you're not good enough, you're going to get knocked down. And so, on the production side, I was, moving ahead nicely, and people seemed to like what I was doing. it wasn't the direction that I wanted to go, but I thought I could eventually sort of turn it around to do something that I did want to do. And I also looked at it from the standpoint, if I understood all of the production points, I could produce my own work later. I knew I could do the creative stuff. Could I put together a crew? Could I get all of the gear? Did I know what everything was going to be? So learning that, I think, has served me well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though from a career standpoint, it wasn't what I wanted to do.
And I'm sure the observation from the producer side allowed you to now direct, manage, understand the shots. So you got, it seems like it's more of an umbrella job. You're herding the cats on the set and making sure everything's flowing in the right direction. So that does sound like it's a great opportunity. So it sounds like you're also somewhat entrepreneurial in a young Glen's mind, saying, if I keep going this path, it's not the path I want to go, but I see myself getting out. So where did that entrepreneurial spirit come from?
My grandfather, my one grandfather, I think you could say that he was feckless, in that he was never happy with what he was doing, and he could always see that next business opportunity. And he was always hustling and always moving forward and always did really well for himself, but it was always going after something else. And he'd get something and then he'd go for the next thing. And that I spent a lot of time with him as a child, and that sort of stuck in my brain that, you don't have to have one path. You can have multiple paths. And if you realize that something's not working, then just walk away. Life isn't meant to be following something that you don't like doing.
Yeah. That's really funny you say that, because I personally sort of got a similar interpretation or experience from watching your cooking styles and how you are very analytical in the key lime pie video, for example, and just approaching everything very directly and very objectively and saying, well, this is what works here, this is what works here, this is what works in the third one, and this is how they compare, and these are the different routes. And that's what I appreciate about your channel a lot, is that it's very factual, it's very straightforward, it's very analytical.
I sometimes think I'm maybe a little too pedantic. I'm maybe a little too analytical, maybe a little too dry, but that's just who I am. I'm anybody else.
That attracted me to your channel and to keep watching the channel, honestly, in my opinion. But I'm also that way in some aspects.
Definitely. I think that there's a draw to it too, especially from a baking side, because I think that's truly, from what my little knowledge, but from listening to Drew, watching you, and my wife also cooking, you make one mistake in baking, it can be a big issue. And I think that video itself showed me how much a little variance can do. And it can change the taste, the flavor, the I don't know, all those little factors that go into it. My best part about the cooking on having Drew and my wife loving cooking, I get to eat all the food. I'm sure it's a great thing on your set as well. So
it can be a little on day 3 of leftovers.
Yeah, definitely. Day 3 is always the hardest one, but day 4 you figure a new way to use it. So
I've worked it into something else.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's a different sandwich. So then you have 2 businesses now, and so you've broken away from the traditional film career, and you've gotten the Le Gourmet TV, and then you also have Heavy G Films, and I believe one is your business side and one is your YouTube side. And so you took Heavy G and you said, I've gotten all of these skills through my career. 25 or I guess about 20 years in the true film industry working for someone else, and then you decided to start Heavy G.
Yeah. So 2006.
Okay.
2006. Julie and I took 6 months off. I had been head of production at a place here in Toronto. We took 6 months off. We bought a round trip ticket to Hong Kong. With a flight to Hong Kong and then a flight back out of Hong Kong 6 months later, with no plan in that 6 months. So we loaded up 2 backpacks and we flew to Hong Kong. We already knew that we loved Hong Kong. Hong Kong is our favorite world city. We'd been there quite a few times before that. And we thought, okay, we'll get to Hong Kong, we'll decompress for a week, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so over that 6 months, we went to Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, and China. And we had no real plan. We just sort of went from place to place to place. Oh, there's something shiny. Or you talk to a traveler and they say, oh, we went to this place and it was really cool. And so we did that. And over that time period, I know this sounds really weird. I went to India and I changed my life. But I went to India and I changed my life. I came back and I realized that I had reached the point in that TV production that I didn't want to be anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be in an office. I wanted to be on set. And I walked into the executive producer at that company and I said, there's these new sort of digital cameras. They're much smaller. Some of our clients might want to do things that are on a smaller budget for this thing called YouTube. Might you want to pursue that? And he's like, I don't really understand that. We do film, we do $1 million budgets, digital cameras and online doesn't make sense to me. I have no interest in that. I said, fine, and I'm out. And I walked away and I bought a couple of digital cameras and I started Heavy G and I started contacting people at ad agencies that I knew very well and said, look, I've got these cameras. If you want to do something smaller that isn't a huge budget, we can move quickly and get this stuff online if you're interested. And that grew from there. And
so that's pretty. 2006 YouTube was a totally different place than it is today. Yeah. I mean, I don't think they added ad revenue to YouTube to 2008 or 9.
So I started our own channel in 2007, and I don't think it was monetized until 2009. Yeah, but even then, when it was monetized, it wasn't.
Totally different game than what it is today. So you took this. I mean, it was at that point, 2006. It was more so like a dumping ground for people's memories, and there wasn't so much of channel science. And so you're looking at this saying this is going somewhere. How did you see that YouTube was going to grow?
So several of my cousins worked for ad agencies.
Okay.
And a couple of them at that point worked for Nielsen, AC Nielsen ratings, TV ratings.
Yeah. The $5 check in the mail, right?
Yeah. So one of my cousins is a buyer for an ad agency, and he buys time on television to put the ads. So he'll buy a spot on, whatever TV show. Mm-hmm. So after we came back from India and China, we were sitting here on the porch one Sunday afternoon having a couple of beers, and he said, you should start something on YouTube because it's going to be huge. We're going to start moving our budgets.
That's a pretty insider information. That's pretty great.
Yeah. And so I had already been playing with that because I'd been doing videos for companies that they were mostly sort of, I would say, putting into a walled garden onto their own websites. YouTube wasn't really part of the play at that point. They just wanted video on their websites to explain things. And then they would dump it on YouTube and they wouldn't really pay much attention to it. I started my own channel after that Sunday afternoon discussion, and we threw around a bunch of ideas, and I think there were 2 or 3 other ideas that might have led to success earlier than the cooking channel. But I really enjoyed cooking, and I thought it was going to be something that I could really make work.
Well, just from your... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and so that's how I knew that there were a lot of food clients out there that really wanted to show people how to make recipes and how to use their products. And so that was my initial thrust, and it was how to work that out.
But just from hearing the journey thus far, right? Who you are as a person and just knowing you through this it seems like the cooking channel is a great mix of the 2 passions you have in your life, and YouTube as an outlet is a great opportunity for you. So I want to go back to one thing. Part of your Heavy G Films description is from cooking on Mount Everest Base Camp to a crowded kitchen in Hong Kong. I understand Hong Kong now, but I definitely don't understand Everest Base Camp. And was that during that 6 months?
No. So in 2000, when was the Beijing Olympics?
Oh wait.
Yeah. Yep. So in 2007, I took a job for a large pharmaceutical company. I don't know if I can say their name. And in that climbing year on Everest, one of the Canadian climbers had a pump. He was diabetic.
Okay.
And so he was wearing a pump. He was going to be the first Canadian to summit Mount Everest with a pump and with diabetes. And so they got this great idea that, well, we're going to go to Everest and we're going to follow up Everest and we're going to shoot this TV commercial. And so when Julie and I had been on our trip, we had gone to Everest Base Camp. And so as I'm talking them through the budget, I'm like, this is really tough, right? Do you have a plan B? And they're like, no, we don't have a plan B. It's got to work. It's got to work. And I said, okay, so that we fly into this little town kind of halfway to Everest, and then you walk for 2.5 weeks to get to Everest Base Camp.
Wow.
And we're going to have to carry all the gear. We're going to hire like 20 or 30 guys, Sherpas, to carry the gear. And they're like, oh, no, we'll do it. It'll be fine. And so I said, okay, we'll do the job. I'll take the job. So I took the job to lead this thing to Everest Base Camp. And while we were there, I realized that there was a lot of content around that I could just sort of, on my time off, go out and shoot. And so I started shooting other people cooking on Everest and what they were cooking and what they were doing. And some of that stuff is still on the channel.
Okay.
Hidden way deep. But yeah, so I shot this job, kind of crazy. I can send it to you if you want to see it.
I would love to. Yeah, that Everest is something that I love in my own life. But so what is the cooking culture? Wild. Yeah, it's such a, especially in 2007, it wasn't what it is today, and I think there's been, the media coverage of it. I remember the first time I saw Everest, any content was on an IMAX, and when I look at Base Camp from that time, it might have been 2009, maybe even earlier. Yeah, 2007-ish. And it was an IMAX, and Base Camp was there was only a couple camps there. Now you look at video footage, it looks like a mall.
And so when we were there, it was really basic. It's dirty. It is really dirty. Because a lot of climbers take their crap up there and they don't bring it back. You're on a glacier, so there's no place for human waste to go. I mean, it's kind of a horrible place. And a lot of the climbers just eat fat and protein.
Yeah.
Interesting.
You see them. I have never seen so many incredibly fit people eating Pringles in my entire life. Because the altitude changes who you are, changes your taste buds, and Pringles are something that apparently high in fat, very easy to digest, and they don't bother anybody. But there was a guy there who had set up an oven and was making apple pies.
Wow.
And so I get there and I look at this guy, and he's like dragged this oven, or he's had people drag this oven up, a generator and all of this stuff, and he's making apple pies for people. And it's like, this is just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. But it was fun. That is
awesome, and
yeah.
I'm jealous of that 2-week journey there and 2 weeks back too.
You should go. You hate it. You absolutely say, this is the worst thing I'm ever doing. I'm never coming back. And then when you get back down to the bottom, it's like, when am I going again? I have to go again. I have to get there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's some serious elevation change. And so you also have traveled other places. So why was Hong Kong? Because you use that also in your description. Why is Hong Kong such an important place for you and your wife?
So I'm I used to have a problem eating at places that were maybe less than clean. I would go into, so working in film, you're often, when I was the runner,
yeah,
I would often miss the meal on set, and I would have to go and grab stuff on the go, right? So I would pull the cube van into some place and go into a fast food place and get some meat. And there were more times than I care to admit that I would walk into a fast food place and I'd start to order and I'd see something that I didn't like and I'd leave. I couldn't do it. And so my wife, Julie, said, I have to break you. And so she broke me of this. She said, I want to travel. We're going to end up places where, we're going to be eating street food. You have to get over it. And so I got over it. And so we started traveling very early in our marriage. And we would go for longer periods of time, a month, 6 weeks. And so on one of the trips, we went to Tokyo. Cathay Pacific used to run a thing here in Canada. It was called an All Asia Pass. And for $1,000, you could, as long as you flew through Hong Kong, you could take as many flights as you wanted in Asia over a 30-day period.
What? That's awesome.
Yes. So we would fly to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong, Cathay Pacific flew everywhere. And so we would pick and we would go. And so on one of these trips, we went to Hong Kong. On the first trip, we went to Hong Kong, but we just transferred through the airport and then went to Tokyo. Mm-hmm. And we spent some time in Tokyo, and I loved Tokyo, but I've never felt so out of place. Tokyo is amazing, but Japan is the kind of place that if you don't fit in, you don't fit in. And when we flew out of Tokyo, we went back to Hong Kong for a few days. And when I got out of the subway in downtown Hong Kong, I said, I'm home. This feels very comfortable to me. The chaos was just absolutely wonderful, and I loved it. And so from that point forward, we just keep going back to Hong Kong. We just keep finding ourselves in Hong Kong. Although I may never go back now.
Well, you never know. I think the world will get back to its own place, and maybe Hong Kong will change into. It still has that nostalgia in your mind, and it's a pretty cool.
It does.
It's a pretty cool opportunity. That's a great thing to get there and have 30 days of free flights.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It was amazing. They don't do it anymore, and I'm sad because it was just such an amazing thing.
There's a really cool program through Portugal. So if you fly through Lisbon, the government gives you I think it's 3 days layover, up to 3 days layover in Lisbon, and then 2 days on the way back, just to get you to stop through there. So
that's cool.
Iceland does that too. So they have flights out of Toronto that stop in Reykjavik on their way to London, England.
Yeah.
And so you get a free 3 or 4 day layover in Reykjavik.
How did I not know about this stuff?
Not a bad place to. Yeah, you were in Portugal last year. But not a bad place to have to stop. So let's get back to the YouTube channel. So on the channel, we were just talking about potentially videos 13 years ago, 14 years ago. But right now, the latest video I think is 11 years old. And that one is the Leg of Lamb Part 1.
Oh, yeah, that's my cousin, who's a chef.
Yeah, deboning a leg of lamb.
Deboning a leg of lamb. So there are older videos. I sat down probably 5 years ago with a YouTube specialist, someone from YouTube Google.
Cool.
And they did a channel audit, and I here in Toronto at the YouTube office. And there were two of them, and they both looked at me and said, your channel's not going to grow until you take away some of these older videos that are holding you back.
Interesting.
And like an idiot, instead of making them private, I deleted them.
Oh,
and
no.
I should have left them. I now realize that I should have just stayed the course and left them, because some of that stuff, even though it looks horrible maybe now at this point, and compression on YouTube in 2007 was, I think, 240p was the maximum. Like, it's really bad. I should have left it up.
I'm curious what their reasoning was, saying that keeping old videos would hold you back.
They talked about watch time being lower and watch time on these videos being too low, and that it was hurting the average. And
oh, I see.
They felt that at that point the algorithm was looking badly on those videos, and it was holding back the newer videos.
Yeah, less likely to pick you up because of those key factors. From an analytical standpoint, it definitely makes sense, but from a brand standpoint, sometimes you got to find that balance, right?
It didn't make sense, and I really wanted the channel to grow at that point. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. Just let's see what happens.
And so you have 1,300 videos. You're the first person that, when I was doing research on the channel, it said 1.3K. Usually, it's like 50 to 300 to 500 videos on there. It's a lot of videos on your channel.
And there's probably 600 or 700 that have been taken down.
Wow. It's an unbelievable amount of content, and it's really cool to produce that much. Not many people can produce that much content. And so what is when you're going through your mind, do you keep a list of potential videos you want to create? How do you come up with the next video you want to put onto your channel?
I do have a list of recipes that I want to tackle, and so that sits on my desktop. But often I'll just, on a Sunday afternoon, as we're lazing around, I'll just pick up some cookbooks and look through things and say, that sounds kind of interesting. Maybe we can do something like that. And that'll be sort of, I'll go Monday morning and do some shopping and then do it. I also used to spend a lot of time looking at what people were searching for.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped doing that at some point. It just didn't really, it wasn't stuff that I wanted to cook. I was cooking for the algorithm rather than cooking what I wanted to cook. And so now I'm much more, I don't care about the algorithm. I can't run on that hamster wheel. I need to please myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I just cook what I want to cook.
Going back to 2007, at the start of your channel, what was your idea or what was your method for growing your channel back then, especially at a time when YouTube was just this sort of brand new wild, wild west situation? How were you going to grow a channel and get a subscriber base back then?
There was no, okay, so when I started, I had this grand idea. Like the channel was called Le Gourmet TV.
Mm-hmm.
And really what I wanted to do was tap into all of the people that I knew who worked in the food business to come in and be the hosts. And so we would have hosts that, we would have baking hosts, we would have beer hosts, we would have whiskey hosts,
cool.
wine. And so there was a real wide range of people on the channel at that point. And I wanted it to look like TV. I wanted it to look really sort of, and that helped me grow the heavy G side, where I was then picking up more corporate clients doing their videos for their YouTube channels or their websites.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the initial idea. There was no real thought about how to grow the channel at that point. There was no big push to grow the channel or get more viewers or subscribers. It was more about how could I get people in the food business who want to use this method to reach people.
Yeah, and I would say the biggest draw for me to your channel today is the exact opposite of that. It is
total opposite.
Yeah, it is. Your set looks like it's your kitchen. It looks like I could be cooking next to you in your kitchen, and I could do this step by step. And that is, I think one of our friends who also actually worked in the film industry, he was on the podcast and we were talking, and he said the biggest draw to YouTube and the people who do the best on YouTube make it seem like anyone can do it. And you do that so well on the channel, and I think it's interesting to see how the change of channel has happened for you.
Yeah, there was a point where I didn't want to be on the channel. I didn't want to be the face of the channel, and I would do videos because I was between clients, or I wanted to show an idea to a client, and the easiest way to show an idea to the client was to be the person who was doing it. And then at some point I realized I don't need clients. I don't need sponsorship on the channel. The channel should just be my outlet to do what I want to do. And I keep the heavy G stuff separate from what happens on the YouTube channel at this point.
Yeah, but they commingle in the set itself. That's the crossroads, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. A lot of the stuff that I shoot in the studio for other clients is shot in a way that you wouldn't know that it's this studio.
Yep.
Or I pick up all my stuff and I go to a kitchen that they have decided that they want to use. I mean, it's always art directed for them. They found a kitchen that portrays who they think their client or their consumer is, and so I'll just take all the stuff there and shoot for them.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense.
With your YouTube channel, when did you have sort of the realization that, I think you said it was your cousin that sort of gave you that heads up, like, this is going to be big. When did you have the realization, like, oh, he was right. Yeah, I'm glad that I switched over here. Or in other terms, when did your YouTube channel start gaining real traction?
2 years ago?
Yeah.
2 years ago really was when it started. I had been making stuff as my own outlet for the channel. But it didn't make money. It was just something that I was doing. And then 2 years ago we did that Coca-Cola video. And over the course of about a month and a half, we gained like 200,000 subscribers or something. It was like, it happened really quickly. And it's kind of like, okay, well, now the YouTube channel is the thing that I should be concentrating on, and maybe the clients can fall away even more at this point. And so I really enjoy it now. I really enjoy doing the YouTube channel on my own now.
Before the Coca-Cola channel, how many subscribers did you have?
We had. I should know that, shouldn't I?
No, I think it's an obscure question, something you probably haven't thought of.
In comparison to where we are now, it was insignificant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you still had a solid base. You're probably in the 30,000, 50,000, 60,000 range.
We were in the 50 or 60,000 range.
Yeah. Which is by far still a very, very challenging item to get that. I mean, and I think there's a lot of people who overlook, this guy's 50,000. That's not even that much. Like, that's a lot of work to get 50K.
It's almost a decade's worth, really.
Absolutely.
For me it took a long time. And that's kind of why it was never the moneymaker for me. It was the outlet.
Yeah.
And it was also the way that I could showcase to potential clients what they could do and what people would watch, and I could show them the comments and say, people react positively to this.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, that video that you referenced, the Coca-Cola video, was you making the original recipe of Coca-Cola, correct?
The 1886 version from Pemberton. So it's not the original. It's kind of in the middle, just before he passed it on to the next people. Yeah.
And so walk us through your perspective of the experience of watching that video go viral and get you 200,000 subscribers in a month and a half.
It was crazy. It was absolutely crazy because I remember saying to Julie, that thing we listened to in the car, that podcast we listened to in the car about the Coca-Cola formula, I think I might do that. Let's see if I can get all this stuff. And so I ordered all the stuff, and it sat in our basement for probably 3 or 4 months until I said, you know what, I'm finally going to do that. I'm going to go out today and I'm going to shoot that. Mm-hmm. And so to me, it was a throwaway.
Yeah.
It was just something that I was going to do, and I thought it was interesting, and I didn't know if anybody else would find it interesting. And it just blew up. And it was really crazy. It was really crazy.
So at that time, you had about, let's call it 65,000 subscribers, and you probably are averaging like 35, 40, 50,000 views, maybe 100,000. When you see this video, you post it, you get your thumbnail right, you get your title right, you get it up there, and then you come back to, because I'm going to guess that when you posted it 2 years ago, the app was around and stuff like that. You check the app and you pull it up and you say, Julie, we just surpassed 200,000 views. You're probably freaking out, right?
So there's a bar here in Toronto on Queen Street called the Horseshoe Tavern. And Jules and I will go there on a Saturday afternoon and sit on the patio and have a beer, and just it's in a very busy part of the city, and so there's a whole lot of stuff going on. And so we're sitting there, we're having a pint, and I opened up the app and I said, you know what? In the last 24 hours, that video's had 1.5 million views.
Wow. In 24 hours?
In 24 hours. And I cannot keep up with the comments. This is absolutely insane. And so it was like, I'm sitting there having a pint. It's like, that's just crazy. Like, that is so many people watching that video.
That you mentioned something that I definitely wanted to ask about, which was your position or your level of engagement with comments and with your subscribers and how you interact with them. Obviously, it sounds like it's going to be a different answer in terms of how you interact with them now versus pre-Coca-Cola video, but maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Early on, YouTube, like 06, 07, 08, YouTube made it very difficult to interact with comments because you couldn't. If you replied to a comment, you couldn't actually reply to the comment in like a, how now you can
it's a tree format.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. So if I replied to a comment, it would just show up as another comment, and it's like, well, who were you commenting to? And then you would try to put the @ to say that you were commenting, answering something. And it's just like I gave up because it just didn't make any sense to reply. And it wasn't until YouTube sort of fixed that. That you could actually reply to people and they would know that you were replying to them, that I started to reply. And I engaged quite heavily with people for a long time, and now it's very difficult to keep up. And I can't answer all the questions that come in. I try to answer a lot of the questions that come in because people are asking some very specific questions about cooking. And I want to answer them. I want to help them because that's what the channel is about. I just can't get to all of them. It's hard to get through all the comments.
Yeah.
And then of course there's a lot of comments that you just don't want to even look at.
There's always going to be negative, but from what we've
Yeah.
read and what we've seen, and even on our channel, which is much smaller, but it's overwhelmingly positive. But there are always are negative comments, and so you just got to deal with them. So you make the Coca-Cola video, channel grows. Now you're pulling in much more. You're growing at an enormous pace. It seems like that's where your content shift happens, right? Now you're starting to make yourself the brand.
Yep.
At that point, what is the creative process and how did that change for you going into it?
So I realized at that point that I had really been enjoying what I was doing on YouTube, and that in order to really make it work, I needed to engage more, and I needed to be the person, and I needed to make it I don't want to say that I made it about me, but I had to make it about me.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Make it feel a little more homey
Mm-hmm.
and sort of down homey, earthy, because I knew that in the videos where I had sort of done that, people reacted better to it. And so I said, okay, well, I'm going to change the name of the channel. So we ditched the Le Gourmet TV. Some people were having difficulty with the idea of what Le Gourmet TV even meant.
Yeah.
So from a brand standpoint, it worked everywhere except someplace. And so I changed it to Glen and Friends because at that point I realized what I wanted to do was bring back a lot of the people that I had at the beginning.
Yeah.
To come into the kitchen with me and cook.
Yeah.
And so I changed the name and I started being the person and bringing Julie in at the end to taste. That happened just by mistake, and then I realized from the comments that worked. So now Julie comes in and tastes everything with me. And it's been a little bit more difficult getting some of those people from the beginning, my friends, to come back on camera.
Really?
There's a fear factor of being so out there in front of so many people, and they're afraid of what people might think of them.
Yeah.
And so some of the chefs that I work with and some of the food people that I work with don't want to do it. And then COVID happened, and then it just made it impossible.
Yeah.
And I can imagine being like your channel is a large channel, over 340,000, 300. I think it's 47.
It's like 394,000
390.
subscribers.
I am so way off. I
today.
apologize for that.
It's very close to 400,000.
Very close to 400,000, and these chefs are used to being in behind the scenes in a restaurant, not necessarily being known for their name and getting on the channel. And now I can understand that fear, definitely.
There are chefs who want that.
Yep.
They tend not to be the people who are my friends.
Yeah.
The ones that I know just don't want to do it, and so I'm working hard to get them in here.
You mentioned this difficulty of collaborating with some of those previous chefs or friends of yours on the channel as a difficulty of the year of 2020, and with COVID happening. What have been some other difficulties for you and your channel on YouTube? And on the flip side, what have been some successes with your channel? Because it seems like 2020 has brought a lot of people to the home cooking YouTube sector, and that a lot of people are engaging more, especially with baking.
Great question.
2020 has been, for me, YouTube in 2020 has been my outlet.
Yeah.
It has been great for me to come in here. When we came back from Arkansas in lockdown, I turned to Julie and I said, we're going to go every day. I'm going to put up a new video every day because I might go crazy if I have to sit at home for a month. And then I realized from the comments that having that new video every day was therapy for a lot of people. And I would get, these great comments from people saying, thank you so much. It's a calm place that I can come and watch and relax and kind of put what's happening out of my mind. And so 2020 has been fantastic for me and the channel, in that I have an outlet, in that and that I'm interacting with people who really enjoy what I've been doing. So I haven't had any hardship with the channel this year, which has been great.
Yeah. How hard is it to come up with ideas daily? Like that's even 1 month, right? And we call it 4 weeks. 28 video ideas is a lot. 28 thumbnail pictures you got to come up with. 28 titles. That's a lot.
I did that for 3 months straight, I think, 3 or 4 months straight.
Wow.
And it was tiring. It was at the end when when I finished doing that, it was like I'm finished doing that. It was hard because you have to come up with the recipes. You have to know that the recipes that are going to work. You also have to know that you can get the ingredients. There were times where I couldn't get ingredients, and so some of the videos are like, well, I was hoping to make this, but I went to the grocery store and I couldn't get half of what I needed. So we're going to take this recipe and we're just going to play with it as we go along and see what happens. And that worked really well for a lot of people because they were going through the same thing.
So I want to pull that thread a little more, because we talked about at the beginning, you're very analytical in the cooking. You like to have that. How was that feeling of having to go on the fly for you? What was that like?
As much as I'm analytical and love to have things, it's very thrilling. It's very freeing.
Yeah.
It's very freeing. I often, people ask me, when I meet new people who don't know what I do and they ask me what I do, I often will say to them, I play an idiot on the internet. Because it's very freeing to come in here and fail.
Yeah.
And to come in here and just say to people, I've never done this before. Let's do it together and see what happens. And then if it doesn't turn out, it doesn't turn out. And I don't, it just is very relaxing in a way that I found a way to let go of that part of me that sometimes holds me back.
I think some of the funnest cooking that I've ever had is, even with my wife, one time we made, it's when we make mistakes, and that's the best. One time we totally misread a salt measurement. We're making banana bread, and it turned out to be the saltiest banana bread I've ever had in my life. I think it was like we were supposed to put in like a teaspoon, and we put in like a quarter cup or something. It was excessive. But that is the memory that I have, and I can understand that draw and the fun there. It's very cool. So, thumbnails. How important, I can see like from the vlogging side and from these, the thumbnails are such a huge draw to a video. How do you come up with that concept for a food?
I haven't figured it out yet. Because everything that you read says that having a face in a thumbnail draws people to it. And it's very difficult to get a face in with and make food look beautiful. My first thing is always to shoot this beautiful shot of food, and then the thumbnail doesn't work because nobody wants to look at that. And so when you look at the Coke video, it's me holding the thing out, and I'm sort of with my eyebrow up, and I have a hard time with that. I really have a hard time. I struggle with that, and I've gone through lots of iterations of thumbnails, going back and changing thumbnails to see if it changes the number of views. I haven't figured it out. I might never figure it out. It's very difficult, and I'm kind of envious of people who do those comedy videos, where it is very easy, in my mind anyway, to come up with a silly looking video that conveys that it's a comedy video. Food is something that's kind of difficult, and I often look at videos that have horrible thumbnails of a stack of pancakes that looks like meh, and yet they have 3 million views, and I look at that and I think, okay, so the thumbnail isn't important. Is it important or is it not important? I really don't know. I'm still feeling my way through YouTube, and because they changed the way that the algorithm works, and then what had been working doesn't work anymore.
And I think it's always happening. And I really think that the thumbnail and the titles kind of go back and forth of what's most important in this new algorithm, or these new change, or these new updates. And it's very difficult. So I hear that even if you figure it out, it might change the next day. So you kind of have to be nimble. You have to play with so many ideas and so many things. So it sounds like you by not figuring it out, you have figured it out, right?
I'm willing to change. I think that's the most important thing. I'm not stuck on one idea. I will change. I remember taking the train into the city one day, looking at the app, and realized on the app my titles weren't showing up right because the space was too small. It's like, okay, so tomorrow I have to go back. I have to change all my titles. I have to because most of the people watch it on mobile, on a phone. Yeah. If my titles aren't right, it's not going to work. I've got to go back and change them. And I think you have to be able to cut ties with an idea and say, that's not working, let's try something else.
Is there any particular YouTube project or accomplishment or video that you've made where you feel especially proud of that? You don't feel like I need to keep continuing to analyze this, I feel feckless about it, but more just like I feel like this is something that really showcases my creative output and I'm really proud of this?
No.
All right, next question.
No, I don't. I will, Julie will come in to the edit suite and say, it looks fantastic, put it to bed.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, no, I can't. I need to go back out to the studio and I need to reshoot this. And she's like, no, it's done. And I'm never happy. I'm never happy with it. And I will, I'll cringe on the day that the video goes live and I go, oh, that's not right. But I don't know that other people notice that. Some people do. They let me know.
Yeah.
But most people, I don't think most people notice it.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I think
so. No, I'm never happy.
But that's what's going to always make your channel successful, because you're always trying to make it better and produce the content that you would for your clients. And in this case, your clients are your subscribers and the community that you've created. So I think that is a great thing to do. Obviously it's got to stink like going up against the wire and always wanting to make it better, but at least you have a sounding board with your wife to say, it's good, it's perfect, it's good. Let's go, right? Because you would never get a video out without that.
And that is one of the hardest things to learn when you're a filmmaker, is when it's good enough and when to move on and when to realize that maybe your vision can't be realized. So what can you do to make it the next best thing and move on from there? Yeah.
So I want to talk about one other item. So I have two actually things. Okay. Three. Simple question. So about a year ago, you uploaded 2 videos to Amazon Prime.
Yes.
And I wanted to understand the branch to a new medium and the draw to the Prime, because I believe, it is actually under your Glen and Friends cooking, but it's a very different style.
So, as much as YouTube was there from the very start, in 2007 to 2012, there were many platforms that I uploaded to. There was one in particular called 5minute.com or 5min.com. That was a huge platform that eventually got bought up and rolled into AOL, and then it's rolled into Verizon at this point. And early on, that platform was the one that made me more money than YouTube and got more views than YouTube.
Wow.
And so when I first approached this in 2007, I would say to clients, YouTube is one area to put your videos, but there's all of these other places that people don't think of that really are the place where you should also have your videos and populating. And people would say to me, oh, we want everyone to come to YouTube. And I would say, not everybody's going to come to YouTube. Mm-hmm. If you're not in the other places, and those are the places that they go to, they're never going to see your content. And so I've always put content in multiple places. So we have a Roku channel. I have a channel on Apple TV. Over time, consolidation has narrowed the number of places where you could put content.
Right.
There was a giant content platform that they spent, tens of millions of dollars to put out there, and we were one of their launch channels, and it fizzled out because they waited too late. They couldn't compete with YouTube.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And so that went away. And so to me, I look at Amazon Prime as another possible place that we could put video that could attract a different audience to what we're doing. Facebook.
You have a great Facebook presence, definitely.
I'm on track on Facebook that probably first quarter of next year, it will make more money than YouTube. It will have more views and make more money than YouTube. Wow. And so I farm that out to someone else. I have another company that comes in, takes my videos from YouTube, re-edits them so that they fit that Facebook format, which is not only the square format, but the pacing, and puts that up on there, and it's doing really well. There's no community, which is one of the reasons I don't really want to interact with it much, because I kind of like the YouTube community, and I'm now going to think of them first, and everything else is just sort of supplemental.
Yeah, people always talk about the Reddit community and how Reddit is a community. I never got that draw. I've always felt my community has been through YouTube. And even if I'm not commenting or being more of a lurker in this sense, I've always loved the idea of YouTube being that community through videos and being part of someone's community, getting their videos, following their lives, following these items. I really love that draw to the platform. So
I was banned from Reddit.
I was also recently banned from a subreddit in Reddit because I posted our video and there's no self promotion. So,
well, and that's what caught me when the Coke video took off and we got like 1.5 million views in one day. It got so bombed onto Reddit that they accused me of what is it, gang posting or getting my community to post for me.
Yep.
And I'm like, I didn't have anything to do with that. Yeah, it's my channel. Yeah, it's my video. And then, so I got banned from all of the food
No way.
subreddits.
I had an experience that was kind of similar, and I was like, we had this content, and it was very specific to a small genre. I follow that subreddit, and I was like, hey guys, I think you would like this video. Not just for my own self-promotion, but they talk about the great stories, great content, great growth. I posted it. I got banned. I responded. I said, why did I get banned? And then I got removed. Just immediate.
No,
you can't do that.
You can't question Reddit. You can't question.
Not the moderators.
As soon as you question Reddit, that puts you even farther out into the field.
I have now learned that. And so, yeah, that makes sense. You gotta diversify those kind of your platforms, and you're the second person who's now said the same thing. Randy Santel, also in the food, totally different side of food, but he is very much into the Facebook world as well. So,
but now with your YouTube channel, you're at the point where you're nearing 400,000 subscribers. You've had the experience of getting very viral videos. Things changed a whole lot in 2020. Where do you see your channel going in the next year or the next few years? What's your personal vision for it, and what would you like to see become of it?
I would like to take the channel in the same direction that I'm going, except fewer videos that are sort of longer term projects.
Okay.
Right. I'd like to keep. So I do this thing on Sunday morning called the Old Cookbook Show, where I pick a recipe out of an old cookbook that I've never made before, and I make it exactly as the cookbook says to make it. And whether you fail or not, that's, I want to keep that one because I find that very interesting. Trying to put all of my food knowledge out of my brain and just following the instructions to see what works. So I want to keep that Sunday morning. I really enjoy that one. But the other content that I make, I want to do sort of longer term projects that are a little more involved and can be a little more filmmaker cinematic. And I don't know how my viewers will react to that. That's really what I'd like to do, or I'd like to inject some of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also like to sort of get to the point where I can maintain the number of views that I'm having, but not have to put out 4 videos a week.
Yeah.
Because it's a grind. 4 videos a week is a real grind.
It's a serious grind.
Yeah.
It's a lot of editing. It's a lot of shooting. That's a lot of time.
And then it's, and then cooking. And there's days where I've got 3 or 4 things cooking here in the studio because in order to shoot it, I've got to shoot it all in the same day. And so I've got multiple recipes happening in my brain, and it's like, okay, I'd like to cut that down a little bit. But I think YouTube is sort of my retirement plan.
Not a bad retirement plan at all.
It's kind of that thing where I can pull back from, proper filmmaking and clients and that grind, because that can be high pressure. There can often be a lot of money involved with what clients want, with what when you're doing advertising. I don't take too many TV ad jobs anymore, just because the days can be 16, 17 hours for a week, and you're doing a 16-hour day every day for a week. Whew. And that's a grind. And I'm kind of at 54, I'm over that. I like this.
Yeah.
Like to have more fun on the YouTube side. So I want to quickly apologize to your subscribers and your Instagram followers. Typically, we like to add some section here where we get questions from the the fan base and followers and subscribers. Unfortunately, I didn't post that picture today because I was distracted. I don't get to see Drew often, so I was very distracted on that.
I see that surfboard behind you.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
We actually walked to the beach. We didn't get to surf today, but we surfed yesterday. It was super fun. So my final question to you is, well, two things. What are you watching today? So what does Glen watch when he watches YouTube? And then we can also end with, what was the feeling when you opened the box with the plaque? Two totally different questions. Sorry.
The YouTube plaque behind you.
What was the feeling when you opened the box with the plaque?
It got lost. And I didn't think it was going to come. And so when it actually arrived, it was almost oh, it's here. But then when we came in, we actually did an unboxing of it on the channel, because it's like, thank you so much for believing in us. Thank you so much for hitting that button and subscribing and coming back and watching our videos over and over again. I don't understand why you want to come and watch us, but I'm very thankful that you do come and watch us. It's an amazing accomplishment. And I know that I should move it from back there, but I kind of like having it, because to me, it's like, there are people out there that get something out of what I'm doing.
I love it there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful for people for, coming back and interacting and watching. And I'm even kind of thankful for the people who leave nasty messages from now and again, because it kind of keeps me on my toes. It makes me think,
yeah,
maybe I didn't do it right. Maybe and that's kind of good too. So I'm very thankful for that. And it's such a little thing. It's such, for YouTube, it is such a little thing, but for me, it's huge that many people would click on. And someday I'd hope to have the next one. What is the next one?
I think it's
million?
gold. Yeah, million. I think it's gold, and then I think it's 10 million, and that's a diamond. Oof. That one comes in a briefcase.
That's.
Yeah.
If I can get the gold one, that's fantastic, because it is such a long shot. It is such a long shot to get to that point.
I mean, you're 40% the way there, and I think how the algorithm works, it only starts to churn that content a little bit harder.
Starts to pick up.
Yeah.
If only I could get. I can't say that.
So
if only I could get Peter McKinnon to push me over the top. That would be great.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he did that. He did that for Maddie a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Hey, the shout out's there. Let's see if it happens.
Yeah.
So my final question would be, what are you watching on YouTube today? What do you watch? What's your page look like?
Rick Beato. I watch a lot of Rick Beato.
Yes, I love watching him.
Music. So I watch a lot of music. Yeah, I watch a lot of music channels that analyze either how the song was made or the trajectory that the song took to make it a hit.
I really liked his recent one with all the
sort of pick.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and the producers pick apart certain parts of the song and what that part of the song does to poke that part of your brain to make it a hit. I love that sort of analytical on the music side. I'm a pilot, so I watch a lot of flying channels.
That's something we didn't even get to talk about.
I watch a lot of flying channels. There's some really great ones out there that where they're either building a plane. I like watching people build planes. Yeah. Which I've always said would be my next channel if I can get to that point. Travel channels. I watch a lot of travel channels. Julie and I have a travel channel that has content on it.
Really?
Yeah. That we made quite a few videos for quite a while, just of travel and eating, mostly travel and eating. Mm-hmm. And so that stuff is up there as well, hidden deep on the YouTube algorithm.
Someone's going to find it now.
Yeah, so that's, and I watch a lot of food channels. I like to know what other people are doing in food. I like to know what other people are cooking and how they're approaching food. I think that's really important to know where my place is in the whole ecosystem. Mm-hmm. You have to know what everybody else is doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I don't look at other food creators as foes or someone that I have to do better than. It's like, okay, so I can learn stuff from these people. I can learn, and a lot of other smaller channels, I learn a lot from them. And I do leave comments on other food channels to, give encouragement. And then I stopped doing that for a while because I thought, oh no, that might be seen as self-promotion. And then I thought, nah, it doesn't really matter. I need to help other people. I need to let other people know that they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
What else do I watch? Ridiculous stuff. I watch a lot of ridiculous stuff on YouTube, and I think everybody does that.
That's the fun of YouTube, right?
It's like the Wikipedia. You start with what you like, and then all of a sudden you hit a recommended, and you're watching the 2020 greatest hits of baseball or something.
Yeah. How did I get here? Why am I? How did I get here?
Yeah. I like now that we're getting to the point where the YouTube videos that were like viral hits when we were teenagers and watching YouTube back in 2006 and 2007. The kids today have no idea what they are. So I enjoy so much being like, oh, you have to see this viral video from 2007. Let's go back and watch this QVC shopping fail online. They're so funny, yeah.
What was the kid with the toothache who had the giving him laughing gas?
Oh, yeah.
David goes to the
dentist. Yeah.
Yeah.
David goes to the dentist.
Yes, exactly. Stuff like that.
I get sucked into that. It is very funny to spend so much of my time working on YouTube that I spend so much time actually on YouTube watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that is research, just to know what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm part of the tomato mafia. I don't know how many people will get that reference. You guys didn't get it.
I didn't get it. It went right over my head.
And that is the great thing about YouTube, is there's so much content that you can be so invested in a channel that has like 5 million subscribers, and you can mention it to somebody else who also works on YouTube and they don't know anything about it. Like,
exactly.
That is the breadth of YouTube. It's crazy.
Yeah, from our standpoint, it's like it is we would never have to start reaching out to a different medium like actors or things like that to tell these origins, because there are hundreds of millions or even billions, I don't know, maybe a billion channels, and it is an endless pool of amazing stories like yourself. And hey, thank you so much for your time today. This was it was an amazing time. I really, really learned a lot and loved hearing your stories. It was so fun.
Yeah, I could talk with you for another hour easily. We didn't even get to talk about your studio setup or anything like that. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed talking with you.
But definitely watch the video of the studio. There we go.
Check that out.
So it gets a little dark on the other side, but it's all...
That is such an impressive setup. I was blown away by your dry aging. I don't know what the technical term for the actual item is, the noun, but...
It's a dry aging cabinet.
Cabinet, okay.
So I've got a bunch of beef in that, and then I've got another one that is filled now with charcuterie.
Wow, that's super cool.
So we're making salami and stuff. I'm really looking forward to that.
I loved watching your prosciutto videos as well.
We watched a lot of the Iberica ham. Is that the
Hamoni Iberica. That's one of my favorite things. Yeah, it's so good.
That was that stuff was so good, and it was so hard to watch it hang for a year. I kept walking past it in the brewery, and there it is. We have a brewing channel too.
No,
you have a whole brewing channel, really?
Where Julie and I brew beer. Yeah.
What's the channel called? What's the brewing channel called?
It's called Glen and Friends Brewhouse, or Brewhouse. Glen and Friends Brewhouse.
Okay.
Wow.
If you look up Brewhouse, it'll come up as one of the top ones.
Okay.
Awesome.
I'll check that out. Yeah. Hey man, I appreciate the time, and we'll link we will link that channel as well as we'll try and find the travel channel and link that in the description below. And make sure you follow his content, like and subscribe. Leave him great comments and tell him that he's doing a great job, because he really truly is.
Thanks for calling me. And so if this goes live at 10 o'clock on Wednesday.
Yes.
10 o'clock on Wednesday on my channel goes live. I make spray cheese.
Oh.
Awesome. Yes.
So cool.
So if you've watched the video, come on over to my channel and watch me make spray cheese.
Yeah, please do. And then go watch all of the other cheese ones that you have. You got like cheese curds, you make American cheese, amazing cheese content. So if you're from Wisconsin, you're going to really love his channel. Definitely.
Thanks for calling me, guys. Good luck.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate your time.